Comments, Commissioners? Commissioner Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also am kind of curious about what else we can do with this fund. Are we limited just to the items as you've described them here as to where we're going to put the money? The one that I'm specifically asking about is the Direct Medical Relief Fund for COVID-19. Do we have to use that for the OEM, or can we use it for something else?
Madam Chair, the board retains the full authority to utilize ARPA funds in whatever manner it wishes. There certainly was discretion. We certainly had discretionary money to use outside of the limitations or parameters that were originally given from the federal government related to the use of ARPA funds. We can easily argue that these monies fall within that category. So it really is up to the commission to either accept recommendations or to target other priorities for the utilization of the money. Just remember that, again, we can have broader discussions because of the capability of our reserves. So we look at this money as something that is going to go forward, understanding that we can supplement the money out of the county's reserves. But yes, you have complete flexibility in how you want to commit this $5.6 million at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Macias. I would like to submit to this board that we consider using that $1 million that was Direct Medical Relief Fund to supplement the indigent fund to provide some diagnostics care for the indigent fund, because it's something we don't cover with that right now.
I'd have to have the discussion with Ms. Michael in terms of whether there's any limitation, but certainly the indigent fund has its own financial strength in terms of being able to address additional needs, but it certainly can come out of ARPA funds if you wish to do that.
I'm sorry I interrupted you, Mr. Macias, but when I asked if we could actually use the indigent fund for diagnostics, if I remember correctly, the answer was no, that the fund was not set aside for that. So I would like to suggest that we use this $1 million in order to provide diagnostics support for the indigent fund, because that's really where the biggest challenge and cost issue is for the people who want to participate in that fund.
Yeah, would you respond, please? Let me have Ms. Michael either confirm or suggest where we are able to perhaps address those kind of issues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Macias. Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Michael.
Jamie Michael, County's Health and Human Services Director. Madam Chair, Commissioner Reynolds. The board would have to amend the current resolution to include diagnostics as one of the covered services. We do some diagnostics that do happen within primary care facilities, and we're able to reimburse for primary care. That's already included. And there is other funding available. But right now, if you want to be very broad and include all diagnostics, you'd have to amend the resolution.
Madam Chair, Ms. Michael, could you please explain to me what is if there is a single diagnostic requirement that we're overlooking or we need to address, is there one or two specific diagnostics treatments that we should include? Because we could actually modify the resolution to only include a specified diagnostic form of care, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reynolds, you can amend the resolution however you all see fit within the state regulations. I would have to do some research to find out if there is a diagnostic category that would be most important. Obviously, cancer and heart disease are leading causes of death, but we also have to be very cautious. There's kind of the push and pull. If you do diagnostic, but you don't offer people ways to engage in treatment after you've given them a diagnosis, are we doing more harm than good? And so we have to be very thoughtful when we look at diagnostics, and again, very thoughtful in what is most impactful. What's the biggest gap, I guess. The research should look at what's the biggest gap. And at this point, I can't tell you if diagnostics is the biggest gap, and within that category, what it would be.
Ms. Michael, I know that from my wife's care, when she had cancer, that we had to spend $500 just to get the diagnostics care done. And if we hadn't had that, we wouldn't have qualified for some of the other care that she was given. So if it's specifically cancer or diabetes, and if we could actually narrow the focus of our funding to diagnostics for those two things, which are the most prevalent challenges we have, I would say getting the diagnostics also and having that paid for allows a lot of other funds to kick in that wouldn't be available without that diagnostics. So personally, I would feel really good about this board taking this extra $1 million and adding that to the indigent fund in whatever way we have to do it. Modify the resolution, make it diagnostic specifically for those two things, just something. Okay, because I know how many people cannot afford the $500 to have a diagnostic test run. So if the board agrees, I would like to have some proposal in front of us in the next meeting in order to at least consider this, if you would, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner, I can gather some information from some of our healthcare providers and provide some information to you about cancer diagnosis services.
And diabetes.
And diabetes,
Yeah,
okay.
And I also request that we not allocate this $1 million until we've had that discussion, please. Madam Chair, thank you.
Madam Chair, none of this money can be moved without the commission's permission to new commitments. I just want that to be clear. And again, I just want to remind that this is temporary money that has to be spent within that certain time frame. So it is better that you look at it from a policy perspective in terms of the Indigent Healthcare Fund, because that is long-term funding that doesn't expire. So in this situation, if you don't change the policy, well, it's not clear to us without the commission making a very specific commitment to certain areas, how we would implement this within the existing policies.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. And I believe the request for two specific illnesses, I think if you're requesting that, Commissioner Reynolds, I believe that what Ms. Michaels stated earlier is to find what is the biggest gap, because there's heart disease, there's lung disease, there's so many other diseases that we're facing. So to specify cancer and diabetes only might not be the fairest thing to do, but to look into what has the biggest gap might be fair.